Dr. Vaux, it's an honor to have you. Laurie Hodson, I'm a member of council. I guess, and I can speak from some experience, one of the real difficulties that I've experienced and some of my colleagues have experienced is establishing that there is a scarcity of water. I honestly believe that many of our residents, when they go to their tap and they turn the tap on and the water comes, they're not satisfied that there is a water scarcity. How can there be a water scarcity? You turn the tap and there's the water. I'm also, and I speak as I'm often criticized for being a politician. On the other hand, I accept it as with some pride. I don't know that this council has, and previous councils, wish to engage their community in a solution. And this sets our community apart from many others. It has set our community apart from many others. And I'm worried, and I look at the attendance tonight, for example, that we don't have the folks standing out in the hallways. And how do we engage our community in the absence of a critical or emergency issue, a problem, or until residents perceive there's a problem? And I think you provided me with some kind of a way in which I might do this. And I speak as an individual councillor. I don't know that I could persuade my colleagues to this point of view. Number one, establish clearly at the political level that there is a water scarcity, because I'm not convinced that that's universal acceptance. And number two, if there is an existence of a demonstrated water scarcity, and you spoke to this as an economist, and I respect that, price it. Put a price on it. And when we put a price on it in our community, I don't think we're going to have a great deal of difficulty filling this hall and perhaps the next one. And so I say that quite seriously, that until we can price what is a very serious problem in southern Alberta, I'm not satisfied that the public are going to we're really going to catch the interest of our public and their involvement. So has the pricing of scarcity in other parts of the world actually resulted in an improvement in the democratic process?
Well, I don't know if it's resulted in an improvement in the democratic process, but it has worked. It has worked in some areas. Now, one of the things that you don't do is establishing a pricing policy and then tomorrow morning at 0800 triple the price of water. You've got to move it up slowly and get people accustomed to it. And I think that what I see here in Alberta, and it may be Okotoks is the bellwether, is that there is more of a willingness to talk about various features of the water scarcity problem than there is, for example, in California. And the case I use, people are at least willing to talk about first in time, first and right up here, at least talk about it. In California, that would be a hanging offense. It just can't even be discussed. And so I have spent a lot of time up here working in various capacities on Alberta water problems, because I think that Albertans are at some level honestly committed to solving those problems, and people in California just want to fight about it. That's a point I don't want to leave here tonight without making. I think the other point I want to make in response to your comments, Councillor, is one of the things you can do is simply make it a matter of policy that the city of Okotoks regards water as a scarce resource. That's a beginning, to at least acknowledge it in your code of policy. And then people may have some difficulty with that, but then that allows you to engage them on the whole topic, and you'll get more people to come into meetings like this and listen to the arguments. I'm also a person who's had 60 years of experience with representative democracy, and I'm a person that thinks that there are limits to what political leaders by themselves can do. Political leaders can't get too far out in front of those that they represent. So that I think that citizens themselves have got to become convinced that water scarcity is a problem. They've got to become convinced that it only makes sense to get good data about your water quantity and quality so that you at least minimize the uncertainty that you have to deal with. So I think that's an important part of it as well, and I think things like this speaker series are an excellent beginning.
In part of the discussion and preamble that the mayor had given, it was mentioned that you had some knowledge of irrigation systems, and Okotoks is tied with Alberta and Saskatchewan and everything between here and Hudson Bay. But the question I've got has to do with irrigation systems. Is there work going on to improve how agricultural irrigation takes place? I noticed the canals that you had in your pictures were concrete, whereas ours, I think, are mostly soil-based. We spray the water into the air on a 30-degree day, 30 Celsius that is, with 30-kilometer-an-hour winds, in the middle of the day, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm just asking, is there something going on in developing new technology for that purpose, for the purpose of irrigating agriculture?
Absolutely. I can't speak to how much research, excuse me, I can't speak to how much research is going on here in Alberta, but I can tell you that there is a lot of research going on in the States on developing more efficient technology and better techniques for doing irrigation. And I have suggested in other realms here in Canada that there needs to be more collaboration between Canadian workers and U.S. workers on just these sorts of questions. Let me give you some examples. Drip irrigation, which of course you've all heard of, which gets around the problem of excessive evaporation from flood irrigation and from sprinkling. Now, drip irrigation doesn't work well on a lot of the field crops that you grow here, though we have a new technique that shows some promise that is called buried drip, where the drip system is buried about 12 inches below the surface. And just the root bulb gets a little water, and that uses considerably less water. Let me speak to the canal lining. Normally speaking, we would expect our canals to be lined in concrete to avoid leakage. The exception, and it's why I'm not quick to criticize irrigation districts that have, we don't call it dirt, soil lining, because that is one way in which one can purposefully do groundwater recharge, is by having leaky delivery systems to continually recharge your groundwater if you're using that groundwater. So I know of systems where that's done. Another example that I use all the time, the old irrigation districts in California are among the most wasteful irrigators when their practices are compared with modern practices. The way that works, because those people have the highest priority water in the streams on which they rely, is that the district runs the water in the ditch for 7 to 10 days at a time and then turns it off for 7 to 10 days and allows the users on that ditch to divert as much as they want to, which is usually far in excess of what the crops need. But because those districts have high priority rights, they have no incentive to develop the kind of instrumentation and the kind of delivery infrastructure that would allow water to be delivered on demand and would allow water to be delivered in response to climatic variables which drive the water demands of the plants. So I think the answer is twofold. There's a lot of research going on, and there's a lot of scientific information out there that isn't getting used. So it's not only a research problem, it's an extension problem as well. And that not just here, but in the States.